So trying out a new format here, folks. We'll see how it goes. Welcome to Design Dilemma. There'll be an edit
Insert
there.
dramatic music.
Design Dilemma.
Nick and I wanted to try something where we demonstrate how to design really intriguing, cool lessons and project ideas and just kind of see what we can come up with. The format is Nick and I are going to spin two wheels. One of these wheels we've preloaded with about 30 very random topics that someone might cover at, we're going to say, like an 8th grade level. We utilize ChatGPT to reference standards that you typically would cover at an 8th grade, and they're very broad. They range across math, science, social studies, and English, some of whom we might need to look up on what these things even are, but we'll see how it goes. Then we have a separate wheel with some creative confines. These are things like integrate a field trip or do a role play activity. And we're going to give each other an hour to make a 45-minute lesson.
Right. It showcases progressive pedagogy, right?
Here we go. All right, let's spin the wheel, Nick. This is going to be our subject. Here we go. The progressive era. Thank God it was a social studies thing. We both taught social studies.
You,
we can
Lord.
do this.
All right.
So we got the progressive era, social and political reforms.
Okay. Then what's our creative confine here?
All right, let's spin for creative confines. Technology integration. Ensure that students use a specific educational technology tool, software, or app during the lesson.
This is like a technical challenge in a cooking show, right? Like you're given a set of ingredients and you have to see how those ingredients are expressed throughout the dish.
60 minutes on the clock. Do you have any questions before we start, Nick?
I do not. So I think the first thing that I would do if I was doing this is just get a brief overview of the progressive movement. So if you don't know what the progressive era is, okay, what is it? It says political and social reform brought major changes during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Okay, movement's goals involve strengthening the national government, addressing people's economic, social, and political demands. Cool, the progressive era. What a perfect topic for progressive education. Some of the context here, the US population nearly doubled between 1870 and 1900. Overlapping issues, so some intersectionality on labor rights, women's suffrage, economic reform, environmental protections, welfare of the poor, and poor immigrants. Oh, interesting, okay. And of course we have to integrate some kind of technology here as well. All right.
These are the standards for the progressive era. I'm gonna go ahead and take the description too. Always aligning. There's that. Okay, so these are things that I can hit on when it comes to the progressive era. And I'm definitely gonna include Upton Sinclair's The Jungle with a primary source for our literacy stuff, but also just a really shocking narrative, and it's a good thing to include. So I'm definitely gonna include that.
On the morning of February 10th, 1906, as Wiley was busily preparing for the coming battle in Congress, the American public awoke to the...
It has been literally a decade since I've written a lesson plan, so bear with me here. I guess we made one for our interdisciplinary subject, but at least for like the classroom setting. Okay, so I have in 1906, Upton Sinclair, a journalist, wrote about a collection of meatpacking plants, and then in the next part I'll talk about what he's called. Those are muckrakers. So key terms, 5 minutes.
Getting into the meat and being turned into sausage, about how filthy the conditions were, and Americans were eating a lot of meat.
Write a 1-sentence description of the progressive era in the United States. Write this at an 8th grade reading level, because a little too, and this is honestly like such a good use of ChatGPT. That's like mundane stuff. Like I know what the progressive era is, but actually having to type it out is extra work and extra thinking. So I have half my time left, and I'm finally getting the activity. I need to find an ed tech tool or some kind of tech tool.
Nonprofit digital publication dedicated to highlighting underreported stories in global affairs. Oh, that's awesome. Cool, the legacy of muckrakers and social media activism. Oh, neat. Oh, this is perfect, perfect, perfect. Obviously, we want to try and keep things to be open access, free, YouTube's great for that, but also finding some nonprofits like this could be great as well. I know Chris is just going nutty with his. mine's pretty boring here, but becoming a muckraker. Okay.
Ed tech tools typically suck. So I'm gonna see if I can't find a tool that's not ed tech, just like a typical tool that I could use in an ed tech environment, to maybe make. Maybe we could like make regulations and then talk about like what would be like the pitfalls, like the dangers of over regulating. Maybe it could be like a thing, or like who you would need to convince. Oh, because then you could do from like the business perspective, like, man, it's really difficult for me to add in all these extra things that you're making me do.
Journalism exposed agricultural practices, like in Iowa, that's been a big thing. Yeah, here we go. A pig farm investigation exposes industry's practice from ASPCA. And I feel like that's a pretty, like neutral source as far as just political stuff. Okay, so we understand what muckrakers are. We looked at Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, at least in that video, in that example. We read about how social media activism has this connection to investigative journalism, how sort of influencers and influencer culture can use the bully pulpit, how some states have ag-gag laws. Let's change these a little bit.
So I'm gonna get like really meta here. We use ChatGPT to generate a list of subjects and creative confines. What if I use ChatGPT here? Is that the best thing to use ChatGPT to do it? There has to be a way to use AI. Ooh, what if we have the debate with AI?
We are bombarded with clickbait, whether it's that quick fix for an ailment or that one simple trick that's going to make your computer or your phone run faster.
We'll see how that works. I'm a little cautious of this, but let's just see how this works. So in this activity, you will create a list of regulations on a specific product.
So what I'm imagining then is at some point in the next couple of weeks, essentially you'll put aside some of that time for kids to be doing that investigation so we can figure out, okay, if we're, maybe there's a school board issue. I kind of like that, school board issue or policy, right? How does school board policy get made? That could be kind of cool. Dress code, what are things that kids, bathroom policies, phone use at school, bullying, and then probably come up with like a product. So like at the end of this, let's start with the end in mind and the product. So it's either going to be like some kind of digital writing piece, so then you're going to include interviews, photos or images. Are you going to take them? How are you going to get those? Video embed, kind of stuff like that.
Act as a business owner. I am going to describe to you a regulation I need to put, that I want to put on your business. If I'm not, tell me why. God, we hope that works.
Kids kind of gathering background knowledge. Okay, so it's like, if you're going to investigate some issue with the school board, right? How do they come up with the dress code? So, how could we change the dress code if we feel like there's some sort of injustice or some inequity in how that is enforced? Are those policies determined? So I'm imagining then like some work time. So like a week or two for student work time on these.
Yeah, that came down to the wire. I was very stressed.
I'll be curious to see.
All right. So walk me through it, Nick. What did you make?
All right. So I started off just by like situating this inside of a bigger picture unit and just assuming that you will have taught about a lot of the other kind of progressive era stuff. So kids will have a lot of context.
Yeah.
And then I figured for
This is
more
very funny.
and pick a topic, go through all that stuff. Is this like yours? Is this what you did?
You'll see.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because when I was researching topics, I was like, okay, these are all kind of cool. There's lots of modern day things, but this is really like a learning by doing thing.
Yeah.
And if you click
So you got
on
a slide deck.
yeah, I call it like becoming a modern day muckraker. And so I thought I would just create these materials real quick. You could assign these to kids just to do if you were doing virtually or whatever. But two real quick videos, they're 5 minutes long, just like getting to the basics of that. a real cool article then that actually just looks at.
They're
There
gonna
we
do
go.
this in 45 minutes, huh?
Yes, they're going to do
All
this
right.
part in 45 minutes.
All
This is
right.
going to do 45 minutes. So this is really, I found this website which I'd never seen before. But it's called, go ahead and open it up. Like, hey, let's start to build connections between the era of Upton Sinclair and the kind of more complicated, interconnected multimedia world that we have today. And like the bully pulpit is basically like influencers, right? So like with great power and great influence comes great responsibility. And then these next ones are kind of optional, but I know that ag gag is big in Iowa. We're a big ag state. One of these pieces of legislation made national news. So I thought, depending on your context, you can include that. Trying to just get kids to understand then how do we sort out what actual investigative journalism is, and like that integrity and honesty and adherence to facts and truth instead of clickbait, instead of TMZ gossip, and then make some modern connections and be like, okay, how can we be that? So then just
Yeah.
asking real broadly. So you can brainstorm with kids what issues or topics are important to investigate locally.
Sure.
And I picked the topic. I just put this out here like, hey, is it enforced equitably? I bet kids have real strong opinions about this. Plus, it's one that as they dig into it, they might actually find, oh God, it is enforced equally or equitably, right? I'm trying to get kids to understand that word. But then go through the process like, okay, how are those determined? How can you get that data? How can we support that claim? Who can we talk to? And there's some real good local sources because, you'll have to get
Right.
behavior report data on the kids who get written up for dress code. And I'm sure that's somewhere they have a breakdown. Or if they don't have that data, then that's the story is why is there not demographic data for this particular thing?
Yeah. So is that where the tech part comes in? How does it integrate the tech?
So then go back to the lesson. So really this is where the technology comes in then. Are you going to create writing or like a piece of multimedia? So the writing part will need to include, I'm imagining, when you read something on a news website anymore, it always has some embedded media, photos,
Mm,
images, videos, audio, some kind of multimedia in there. And then just work for them to do that. But yeah, they have to include some kind of multimedia. If there is any avenues for student journalism, like a newspaper or like a news channel or a video class that all the kids can watch, then have them do all that. And then we can reach out to a public audience as well, get local media coverage for it, local newspapers, obviously publish things on YouTube as well.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Honestly, so similar to my lesson, you'll find out. But I think that if I were doing this with kids, the platform I would use if I was looking for like a specific tech tool would
Yeah.
probably be a ghost blog. I guess it requires a little bit of technical know-how, but if you make a DigitalOcean account, which is like a web server hosting account, and when you're setting up a digital hosting server, kind of like a website, you can choose Ghost as one of your options. And if you choose Ghost, it will set up a blogging page for you that you set up like a WordPress blog or something. And it's like,
It looks real good and it's
it looks real good. It's
yeah.
like $3 a month, I think. But the
Mm.
reason why I like that as opposed to maybe like having kids use Medium or WordPress or something is that you're hosting it. So you have all the data.
Something that's not just like between kids just aren't turning it in and you're just watching a video and then it's one
Right.
and done kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like let's try
It
to
would be
make it as
very
authentic as
cool to
possible.
have the kids like out in the hallways or even just interviewing each other in the classroom about different issues and recording that. I think would be a really cool practice.
Yeah.
I also did regulation during the progressive era. Specifically, I did food regulation.
So funny. I was gonna
Now,
do that. I'm so glad I didn't
now,
now.
if you notice, I did include the standards like any good teacher would.
That
This
is
is the
true.
Ohio Social Studies Standard. I even included the National Council for the Social Studies Individual Groups and Institutions Standard
Look at
um,
you.
to be top of the line here. I
Teacher of
also
the
have
year over here.
the
Jeez.
format. So here's like the general overview of what I ended up doing. All right. I didn't have
Okay.
time to fix all this at the top. The Google document is my lesson plan. So I don't have like a separate doc. So they start off by reading an excerpt from The Jungle, little paragraph here that I bolded a couple points that I thought were especially bad. I've read this before with kids, and it's like kids are always like, what in the world is going on? So really
Right.
setting up just like the stage here for just how bad things. So
Yeah.
did that. I have like a little like what do you notice, what do you wonder type thing. Just
Oh, cool,
you know,
cool.
react to it. I did some key terms, and then here is like the entire activity. My ed tech tool is a stretch, so we'll see how this works out. I barely had time to test it, so it might not even work. The idea that I had, very similar to you, is that we would create a list of regulations on a specific product, but I did it in time period. So it's not in the modern era. They are regulating something that actually happened to convince a captain of industry to adopt that regulation. So for example, Up Sinclair wrote The Jungle to establish sanitary standards for factories. I have 3 different things, which are, you can just like click and it goes down to it, that are like primary source documents, I guess, and you choose one of these 3. So you can either talk about textiles. They're differentiated solely because I didn't have enough time to find enough. I couldn't find information on. The textile one's really short. It's just 2 pictures.
Oh, cool. Scalp will not heal. You're getting them to see the how the harm to people was reported at the time,
Then I have a little bit longer. This is not super long. It's like a page and a half. This is from Spargo's Bitter Cry for Children. This is talking about child labor, where it's basically just like a terrible story about what kids are doing and how much they're getting paid for it and how dark it is. So there's a child labor excerpt. And then if they click on tenement housing, there's another link here that's like kind of the same. This one's like probably the longest one. So again, like you have to differentiate here, but this is from How the Other Half Lives, another like primary source document that just goes through tenement housing. This is probably the most difficult of the bunch. I think if I were doing this for real, I would take an excerpt from this and just like shorten it a little bit.
Sure,
but the overall idea is here. This graphic's really cool.
Oh God, it's 12 families on each flat. So how each room was divided for each family.
And then again, their goal is to design regulations. So I initially asked them like, hey, before you even start doing that, why do you think that it's not really a product, but this concept, I guess, wasn't regulated? All right. And then how might business react to being regulated? So like, why has this been established and why isn't it changing? Then I have them design their list of regulations. So I have an example on here, like workers must store raw foods away from clean foods. If they do not, they are imposed penalties such as fines, or if it occurs more than once, the business is shut down. Then I use ChatGPT as the captain of industry, and I have them copy and paste this thing, but make me find a way to pressure you into implementing my regulations. If I'm convincing, then accept my change. If I'm not, tell me why. I will start by telling you what your business is. But check this out. Hopefully this works. So I put this in, and then they say, go ahead and tell me what kind of business I own and what regulations you have in mind. Let's start a conversation. And I'm going to say like, you own tenement. I keep spelling that wrong. You own tenement houses. And then, I assume you have some regulations in mind to ensure the safety and well-being of tenants. Please go ahead and tell me what specific regulations. And maybe it's like, I think that housing should only be able to have 1 family per household. If you don't do this, you'll be fined or shut down. And then they go into why they don't do it. So like they say like, well, here's the reasons why we can't do that. Like there's not enough housing that's available.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of go back and forth. I didn't get super far into the details of it. I just said, respond at least 3 times and then just put the screenshot of what happened into this box. We then end up with just reviewing that information. So we share out what the business owner said. Did you think that's realistic? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then we just do like a series of review questions.
Dang. All right. Well,
yeah. What do we do now?
Let's go ahead. Let's make these available on on somewhere.
And today's judge is Zoe Bee, who submitted this to us in writing. Zoe writes, I really like both lessons. I think they are both engaging and do a good job of getting students to take an active role in their learning. The first lesson, Muckraking and Social Media Journalism, has a great project attached to it and is therefore a little looser than the second on regulation. I think this first lesson would be great depending on the class. I think it would be harder to fit into the curriculum, and it would take a little more tweaking from the teacher to implement in their specific class. The second lesson is more versatile, with fewer moving parts, so it would be easier to implement while still being engaging. It does feel more traditional school lesson than the first. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It still gets students to think deeply and critically about history and the world around them, while being less work on the teacher's end. I love them both and think both are valuable, but if I have to pick, I'd pick the second one. And that's mine.
Hey, remember to like, share, subscribe. We've got a fundraiser going on through the end of the year, so you can find out information about that at the link here. And if you want to be a judge or be involved in a future design challenge, just let us know in the comments below. Thanks.